Welcome to MarketBeat Monday, everyone. We are so glad to have you with us for a busy Monday in the market. Nothing like starting the week out with quite a bit of volatility. Here to break down all of the changes for us, our MarketBeat analysts Chris Markoch and Thomas Hughes. Guys, thanks so much for being here again for another MarketBeat Monday. For everybody joining us in the chat, I love to see all of the stocks you've already put out. There's a lot to talk about today, quite a few earnings this week, and of course, just a few current events out there that are impacting the market too. So we're going to get to all of those. If you've not been to Market Monday before, this is a live stream and it's a live look at some of the stock tickers that you guys put in the chat. We love hearing where you're from and what stocks you're interested in. And thanks to everyone who joins us regularly. And if you're new here, again, thanks for being here. Chris and Thomas do their best to give you a detailed look, overview of the stocks that you put in the chat. But again, they're not prepping this ahead of time. They're just doing a cold look at some of these things. So be ready. Let's get started right away with kind of the overall market volatility today. We know over the weekend, the news of the new conflict came out, and we kind of expected what happened in the market today to happen. Give us a breakdown, Thomas, real quick on what the market has done so far today.
Honestly, there wasn't much of a move today at all. I mean, it did drop a little bit at the open, but we recovered the losses before the close. Looking at the daily chart, the market moved within this range that it's been trading in since, late November, early December, pretty much moving sideways to me, still showing support around 6,800. Just looks like another day within consolidation as far as I'm concerned.
Chris, how about you? Anything else to add on the what was going on in the market today?
No, I think you expected to see what you saw last night in the futures market, that the futures were red and that extended into the pre-market. That was just a function, I think, of a lot of the high-speed traders, the algorithms doing their thing. And I think when you had the human traders coming in this morning, I think that's when you saw, you saw the market sort of stabilize a little bit. Right now we're in that phase where we don't really know. We don't have a clear picture of what all of this looks like and when it might be finished. And, and I think the market's just kind of rolling with that right now.
Right. Yeah. Somebody just said in the comments too, some stocks up big, others down big today. An interesting day in the market. I think that's a good analysis. I mean, we do have several sectors that are up quite a bit.
There could have been a little bit this morning. There could have been a little bit of people sold out of stocks that they didn't want to be in so that they could buy stocks that they wanted to be in, because you saw big moves in defense stocks and cybersecurity and things like that. So yeah, it could have been people were just, again, selling stuff, getting out of things that they didn't want so that they could buy stuff they wanted.
Right. Yeah. I think the market is assuming that, no matter how intense the conflict with Iran gets, how long it lasts, it's not going to get to be very big. I mean, who really is going to back up Iran? I mean, they can cause some problems, but they can't stand by themselves for very long. So I think the market's just kind of pricing that in. This thing is happening. It's watching it. There are some things being moved, some things being hindered as far as stock price action goes. But, generally speaking, it's just that, another day consolidating, looking towards the future and, wondering what really big is going to happen next.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple of super chats to start the thing. So we're going to get to, if you've not, again, been here before, if you want to make sure that we cover a stock ticker, a super chat is a really great way to get my attention. So we'll get to those. And then after we do our two super chats, we're going to move on to some of the sectors we wanted to talk about. Of course, we want to talk about defense and oil and kind of the big sectors that are getting a lot of implications today. But let's start. I don't want to forget them or miss them. So we'll get to these right away. Thomas, if you want to look up SENS, this is Sensonics Holdings, Inc. I believe that's how you say it. And then we had another super chat that you can look up, Chris. And this one is a greetings from London. Thanks for joining us. Talking about silver, whether spot or proxies such as SLV or SILJ would be good stocks to get into right now. So I believe those would all be silver stocks. So
what was the first one there, Bridget?
Spot or a proxy such as SLV or SILJ. So thanks again for the super chats. Again, great way to get our attention because there's a ton of stock tickers that come into the chat. It's hard to manage all of them. Let's get on to SENS first. And again, this is a cold look for Thomas. So I'll just go over the chart a little bit first.
Right. This looks like a med tech company that's in the early stages of commercializing a product related to diabetes. So that part looks good to me. Forecasts right now don't seem to be very robust, but CPS revenue is, not looking at tons of revenue, but certainly some growth in there.
I'm seeing analyst forecasts that are actually pretty high on this one. So we have one
Right.
as high as $40. It looks like the consensus price target upside is pretty high, but it's a pretty not a lot of analyst ratings out there, but 5 do rate it as a buy right now.
Right. So yeah, I mean, with the industry and the product, it seems like it's well positioned. It's just a matter of commercializing it, making that money, getting that revenue. I think this company might be a takeover target because there are quite a few med tech companies that focus pretty hard on diabetes business. I think Abbott's one of them. Johnson & Johnson's probably one of them too, with really significant diabetes businesses. So with a good product, certainly a takeover target, and with analyst support, I would say that there is certainly some upside potential.
Yeah, our chart's not quite working great on this one. Just to give a little bit more analysis on just some of the other
Right.
data we have on MarketBeat, it looks like ownership is only at about 12% for this one, which seems pretty small. Any
Right.
insights on what kind of institutional ownership we might normally see in a biotech like this?
Well, it just kind of depends on what the outlook is. SENS. Let me get on that page again real fast. But the more I'm looking into the news, it seems like the product really has some application. Get on the Sensonics. Keep going to the wrong place. There we go. Ownership 12%. That's not a whole lot. They were selling the last 2 quarters, so that's not really a good sign. So I'm getting some mixed signals here. It seems like a good company with a good product. They don't have a lot of revenue right now, but they're supposed to be growing. The forecast for earnings is not all that robust. It'll be quite a few years before they have profits without some change. What I'm seeing in the institution and the analyst trends is that there's not enough news to get them really interested. When that changes, the stock price could rise, but I think until then, this one could be struggling.
Yeah, one other quick observation here is that it's definitely on the lower end of its 52-week range, and that it's had quite a range, anywhere
Right.
from $5 to almost $20. So on the lower end right now, the higher end was closer to what analysts were originally thinking on this one. So interesting name. Thanks for bringing it to us with a super chat. Chris, let's get to your discussion. I actually think that silver is a good time to talk about silver right now because the market has had a lot of volatility in the last few weeks and months.
It has, and silver and gold both tried to rally a little bit today. Gold rallied a little bit more than silver did. Silver actually didn't do a whole lot today when all was said and done. So I'm going to assume that the sort of the origin or the intent of the investor's question is to say, like, if you wanted to get into silver, are we looking at buying spot silver, the physical metal? Or are you looking at the miners? Or are you looking at the paper trade through the ETF? So with that assumption in place, I would think that if you're comfortable with the storage and the other logistical things that go with owning physical silver, I would always say that's the best option if that's the way you wanted to go. Given the other 2 options right now, I would definitely lean more towards the junior miner. That would be the ETF for the Amplify, the SILJ, as opposed to just the Silver Trust, the SLV. I think the miners have the opportunity to have the most to be part of that catch-up trade in 2026. That might be where I would be looking to go with the ETF that's with the junior miners, not investing in the paper silver, but investing in the miner stocks.
All right, very interesting. Do you think that silver is going to continue to go up over the next week or so? Again, whenever we see a world conflict like this, do we tend to see gold and silver get a little bit of a boost?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about in the next week or so. I believe long term, I'm still very bullish on both gold and silver for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the conflict with Iran, but also that the Iran conflict also helps facilitate. And I think this is just a long term dollar story, and eventually we're going to see the weakness of the dollar, and that's bullish for gold and silver. So long term, I'm bullish on both gold and silver, but for reasons that have nothing to do with Iran.
All right, we are going to get on to the two stocks that many people have asked about in the chat now, and kind of moving us back to the initial conversation of where this news over the weekend and the conflict is moving us, and that's defense. The two names that stand out, we have a couple regulars, TC and eHelp, asking about Palantir and BBAI. Lots of people asking about BBAI. We know their earnings is coming up just today after market close here, so we'll have an update on those earnings as they come. But let's just talk about overall defense before we get into Palantir and BBAI stock tickers specifically. We saw such a big jump in the defense sector today. Some individual stocks going up 16%. Lots of them up 2, 3, 4, 5% today. Was this expected?
Was certainly an expected reaction given what's happening. What I'm seeing in the charts is kind of a mixed response. Like some of the stocks went up and kept on moving. Like Lockheed Martin jumped at the open, but then sold off during the day. And then some other stocks like AeroVironment sold off like 20%. I mean, they had some other things involved with that move, but certainly like really mixed responses across the market, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize kind of what happened with those stocks. But Chris, let's go directly to Palantir. Thomas will have you cover BBAI. But Palantir, we had a video come out yesterday. Thanks to those of you who watched it and kind of looked at the analysis on whether it was a good time to buy Palantir. And in full disclosure, Chris and I recorded that video before Saturday's news kind of broke of everything that happened over the weekend. We recorded it before the weekend. And so any updates since then, Chris, on what all of this conflict might mean for Palantir?
Well, so, it was interesting because when you and I did the video, Palantir was down around 130, and we said that was probably, or, I said that was a good buying point, good buying opportunity. And Palantir shot up over the weekend on the news, and it held those gains today. It did. Palantir was one of the stocks that didn't dip. It held the gains that it had. It closed today around 145, which I believed when we talked about on the video. I think that's the point that it's got to stay at to confirm that the downtrend is really over, and we'll see what happens there. The reason why Palantir is up in regards to all of this is because of their surveillance ability. Palantir hasn't been named officially, and I don't think they ever will be named, but it's likely that Palantir technology was used as part of the surveillance in this, as far as identifying where the targets are that they want to strike, when do they want to strike them, and that's what Palantir does. And they, when they do it on the government side, when they do it for the Department of Defense, this is what it's used for. That's distasteful for some investors, but it's what it does, and it's why the stock's up today.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on Palantir? Long term, we see this initial reaction and it held it.
Sure.
But when we have a rise in geopolitical tensions and issues like this, we know any defense company or any company like Palantir that gets about half of its revenue from defense contracts could be implicated. Do you think that this could be a more of a long-term turnaround for Palantir, or is it going to be short-lived?
Well, so I think let's be clear. They get about 55% of the revenue from the U.S. government. That's not all from the Department of Defense. The government's big. The government is a big entity, which doesn't just include defense. So to say this, it's certainly possible that the stock's going to pull back a little bit from the bounce it got today. But I think today is a large reminder of the fact that Palantir is not just another contractor for the U.S. government. I've written about this before. I've talked about it before. It's sort of the operating system for the U.S. government and for the Department of Defense. It's not going away. It's there, and it's proving its use case in this area. As a long-term hold, I don't worry that much about the price action on a day-to-day basis. I think about where I think Palantir is going to go in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's reason enough for me to say you want to own the stock. But again, I understand what the company does is distasteful for some investors. The valuation of the company right now is distasteful. That's fine. As a long-term investment, you're buying and holding, I'm okay with it. Trading it is a totally different story, and if you want to stay away from it, I totally understand.
All right, very good. Let's move on to BBAI. And this is one that so many people asked about, Thomas. I'm sure that has something to do with the earnings coming out.
Right.
And this is also a stock that you have not been very, very bullish on in the past. Have you changed your mind on BBAI at all?
Well, really nothing in the news flow has changed the story. So this report will be really big. We're waiting to see some kind of news come out that affirms all the hopes that are in the market. It should be out within minutes based on the previous releases. So maybe we'll get it out here pretty soon. But I think this is still that same old story where we have the market, retail traders really see the potential in the stock. But really nobody else is following through on it. Institutional interest is still very light. It's about 7.5%. They've been accumulating, but still only 7.5%. That's not very much. They're just really nibbling on it. Very small speculative positions. Only 4 analysts are covering it. They're seeing some upside potential in it, but they're being offset by short sellers. Short interest is at 30%. I think it moved up in the last report. The stock price certainly moved down. So again, we're just waiting on something to affirm the outlook so that somebody besides retail traders want to buy the stock, or that the short sellers want to start covering. Yeah, short interest was up 10% in the last report. We're at 30% right now. So yeah, waiting for that report. Hope it's a good one.
All right, there's BBAI. Let's move on. There's so much to talk about. Another big one that reports this week is AMPX. This is one we do talk about quite a bit on the show, but we have a lot of investors who are interested in it. Thomas, you can cover that one. I'm going to have you, Chris, look into OSS one-stop systems. We've had quite a bit of discussion in the chat about this one. So OSS is one for you to look up, Chris. Okay. All right, Thomas, let's go to AMPX. What are we seeing in that right now?
Well, today's action was good. The stock rose like 10% at the high, 8% at the close, showing support in the 1050 region, above moving averages, above uptrend line, showing signs of rebounding, all in preparation for the report that's due out this week. We're looking for this report to, again, affirm a very robust outlook. Unlike Big Bear, AMPX has an even more robust outlook. It's been affirmed by its technology, orders from the government, follow-on orders. We're looking for this upcoming report to be really a blowout and also include strong blowout guidance, affirming this really longer-term outlook, amplifying that outlook. I see this stock rising above $15 later on this week, but again, that depends on how the report comes out and what the market thinks about it, because also there's a high expectation, built into this one. The market's had a long time to think about this stock. I mean, we've been thinking about this, for several quarters, almost 2 years, really watching this thing build. We could get, the catalyst with this report that unleashes all of this, built up 2 years of built up, expectations. Maybe we don't. But I think it's going to be a good report.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing just looking here at the chart, it looks like it's almost profitable for an up-and-coming company. Do we think it's going to turn that corner into profitability soon, or even this report?
Probably not this report, but what the report will help do is kind of give some clarity to the profit outlook. Right now, the company is in a cash burn phase, trying to ramp its abilities, ramp its production, ramp its capacity. So, profits might not be coming quite as soon as some might hope. But again, I think that the outlook, the results are going to help affirm the profitability outlook. Right now we're looking for profits by the end of next year. And then certainly full year profitability the year after that. So again, just waiting for that release, looking for some details to kind of give the market something to chew on and give them a reason to want to buy the stock again.
All right, interesting. Okay, I'm going to have you look up an interesting ticker that came out here, ISSC, Innovative Solutions and Support. This one, little teaser here, it's up 190% in the last 3 months. So interesting chart. Look into that one.
ISSC, two S's or one S?
ISSC, yes, two S's.
All right. Oh, it looks like Big Bear reported the stock just dropped like 7%. I'll look at that in a second too.
All right, interesting. Okay. Chris, let's go on to OSS. What did you learn about this company?
Yeah, so the stock's up about, let's see, let me just check it again here. Stock's up about 4.5% today, or it was up about 4.5% today. And there's a reason for that, and that's it has a tie into the defense industry. So the company designs rugged GPU accelerated systems, and it services many sectors, but one of the sectors that it services is military and defense platforms. So, and then it also services autonomous vehicles and drones and industrial automation. So it's in the sweet spot as far as where the Pentagon is trying to go in terms of that $1 trillion it's trying to get passed into Pentagon spending. And I think that investors are jumping on it today because they see that's where the opportunity could be. So the thesis here, Bridget, is that AI workloads have to go from data centers into real world environments, and that's what OSS does. So I see the company reports earnings next week. It's the 18th, so whenever that is. Actually, it's a couple weeks. So they don't report earnings for a couple weeks, but that'll be something for investors to keep an eye on. It looks like the company just turned a profitable quarter, both GAAP and non-GAAP, in their last earnings report. So that's positive. Revenue's up strongly year over year. So that's something else investors are going to want to watch. Institutional ownership's about 32%. But last quarter there was a little bit more selling than buying, and but in the last 12 months, that's about 2-to-1 in favor of the buyer. So, yeah, I can understand why investors are excited about this one. Again, I think they've got a big earnings report coming up in 2 weeks, and we'll just have to see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm looking. There's a lot of comments from one user about OSS in the chat. If you want to learn more, go scroll through the chat and see what at DankC60 has to say about it. Lots of great comments on it. Thank you for that.
Now it did pop. No, the interesting thing is with the jump it had today, it did pop above the analyst consensus price.
Yep.
So we'll have to see. Which could be an indication that the stock got a little bit overbought, but.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of coverage on it either. It's a pretty little known stock.
It's a young company, it looks like. It looks like it's a fairly young company.
Good information to look at. Thank you for that, Chris. All right, let's get on to this other one, Thomas, which I thought was pretty interesting to look at. That's ISSC.
Right. This is kind of an older school avionics company. Looks like it's been gaining traction recently with some key projects. Certainly has had some revenue growth and some earnings improvement. Stock price is rocketing higher. Looks like the institutions are also accumulating, which is a good sign. And institutions all rate the stock as a buy, so that's unanimous. The problem is only one of them has a price target, so even they're not really sure where to price the market. And the one price target we have is looking for some downside right now, so I would be concerned with that. Other than that, it seems like a decent play. The chart certainly looks good. We've got convergences, rising momentum to support it. So just want to get in tune with the news flow, make sure the news is all good, and be on the lookout for some catalysts.
Good. I want to talk about a little bit more. Whenever I see a chart that's this explosive, I like to get your personal take on this. Does it ever scare you when you see a smaller stock that's already taken off this much to look at getting in when it's seen this much momentum? Or what's your take as an investor, Thomas, when you're looking and you see a chart that's this hot right now, as far as whether to buy now or to just see if it's one to watch?
Well, right now the stock price is just moving up, so you don't really want to chase that price because you'll end up, getting caught at a peak. So you always want to wait for pullbacks, try to buy it at the dip. But between like now and then, traders and investors are going to want to look into the outlook, look into the news flow, and see if the outlook matches where the price is, if it looks like the stock is fairly valued or not, or if it looks like the outlook is accelerating. In the event where the forward outlook is undervaluing the company, then certainly you would want to buy it now. But again, wait for a pullback, wait for prices to come to you. You don't want to chase prices and just get caught at one of those peaks. It's just, cut into your profits over time. And part of being successful is trying to maximize those profits when you can and minimize your losses.
Yeah, I do have one thing pulled up here, and I think that's a standout for this name. Again, it's just interesting that we've not really seen it covered much. It had quite an earnings beat just this last month in February.
Well, right. That's part of what's driving the stock is its outlook is improving. I'm not really sure what was driving the beat, but certainly there is some demand for the product, possibly underpinned by contracts, which would be what you're going to want to focus on as an investor. What is it that drove that outlook? How does it affect the long-term outlook? Is the long-term outlook bullish? Is it improving? Is it diminishing? If the outlook is improving, that will probably help drive the stock higher over time.
Okay. All right. I don't think I had either of you looking at anything in particular right now, did I?
You did not.
I did not.
You
Good.
should have me looking at it.
Well,
Right.
then we're going to
So
go into some ones that I wanted to cover. A few different people have been asking about drone stocks, and I've already prepped with some of those. ONDS is another one that people wanted to hear about. Let's look at, there was a lot of ups and downs with that today, it sounds like. Red Cat is the one that I had pulled up earlier, so I'll pull that one up, and then we'll get to ONDS. Red Cat saw a 16.5%, or close it up at 16.5%, up even higher at certain points today. It does look like there might have maybe been some short seller stuff going on today. Not sure. Do you think we saw some of that in these smaller to mid cap kind of defense stocks?
That's always a possibility. You see, Red Cat's got short interest over 20%.
Yeah.
It's been on the rise. Although it's been dipping a little bit in the last month, but it's still on the rise. So it's always possible that this was just a question of the stock with what happened. With what happened over the weekend and interest going into drone stocks,
Right.
that you probably had short positions that had to cover and had to cover quickly, and that could be part of the reason.
That's certainly plausible. Looking at ONDS, short interest is like 35%, pretty high. Looking at both these charts for RCAT and for ONDS, it looks like today's action touched resistance levels and then fell back, and it's confirming these resistance levels. So it looks to me like these markets could be capped for the near term until there's some other kind of catalyst to get the shorts to cover, or for retail investors to force them to cover.
Yeah. It seems like there's plenty of catalysts for this industry today. I mean, this week just shows more and more catalysts for this sector. I also think it's important to talk about with all of these kinds of drone-related defense stocks. The analyst forecasts are very bullish on the future for these. I know I've mentioned it's one of the sectors that I think there's just a lot of money coming into this year, so it's kind of hard to ignore. We have quite a few different names to look at in the drone sector, so I'm going to stay with it right now. Let's look at KTOS as well, and then another one was SPAI. I think that's in drone sector. I'm not certain on that one if I'm familiar with that ticker, but I know Credo is one name that we talk about with this for sure.
Credo is a good stock, and I'm kind of conflicted on it right now because the outlook is good. It's been performing well, but it's spending a lot of money, and that's kind of creating some headwinds. And so some of those headwinds include insider selling, that's kind of capping gains, and then analyst sentiment since the last report was a little bit. Let's see here, right. Right, and they're leading the market too. God, what was it that I was looking at before? Something that really caught my eye. Ownership, institutions. Right, institutions are selling. Right. So there's certainly some bullish tailwinds, but on the flip side, we've got institutions selling, and I think the short interest might have been rising a little bit, and just some headwinds for the stock where it seems like there's some bullish tailwinds blowing. But traders and investors might want to be cautious in the near term and wait for the market to show some signs of more traction.
All right, one other name to cover in this one was Redwire too. I think that's in the same kind of sector. And did we look at the SPAI? I don't think I've covered that one before, but I feel like Redwire is usually in the group of drone stocks that we cover. Here's that chart.
SPAI, Safe Pro Group.
Yeah. Wasn't Redwire one of the space? Yeah, it's space infrastructure stock. So it's similar. It's
true.
kind of tangential to the drone industry. Transformation, growth.
That's right. This one showed up on the space robotics story that I talked about. That's right.
Right. We're looking at some pretty hot growth this year, I think. It's been a pretty pivotal year for space stocks in general. We're looking at accelerating commercialization of space with more launches, more satellites going in space, more space-based services, more services for space companies. Yeah, looking at double-digit growth, verging on hyper growth this year.
Yeah, interesting to see how high those analyst forecasts are taking this one too. On the high end at $22, which would be a double for this stock this year. I do remember this one now. I think it was talking about 3D printing in space. I think this is one of those names that covers that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of their, it's not like their main business, but they definitely have that going on. Yep. Where some of their manufacturing or they're experimenting or displaying how they can perform space-based manufacturing, because there are some processes that can only be done in zero gravity, right. And that's one of them.
Yeah. All right, let's look at SPAI quick, just so I don't skip by that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, Bridget. So this is one of those companies that I'll just start with a caveat here, Bridget. This is a tiny company. Market cap's only 115 million. Not tremendously high short interest, but it does not have much institutional ownership at all. The bull thesis here is somewhat similar to OSS. They don't do the same business as OSS, but they're operating in somewhat of the same area in that they do AI-enabled drone and imagery analytics. And one of their key markets is for defense and security applications. I see they just got a contract a little while ago for about $1 million with the U.S. government, but they're generating very, very little revenue right now. That $1 million contract is important because they've never, in the months that they've been reporting earnings, they haven't even hit $1 million in revenue. So that's a big deal there. But the company's not profitable. This still falls into the category of a speculative stock. Let me look here. What did it do today? Yeah, it had a nice bounce today. Obviously, that was in sympathy with whatever else, with everything else that's going on, and anything that's touching the defense industry is going to get a bump. Analysts have a $10 price target on it, so there's some upside there. They're going to have to show that they're generating significant revenue. They do report at the end of this month, so March 27th. But it's a speculative stock. This is a very, very tiny company.
All right, very good. Let's look into.
And I don't know the details of that $1 million contract either. I don't know if it's like they get it all at once or if it's going to be dribbled out throughout the year. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Let's move on to one of my favorites, and that is taking an update on ASTS. Just get into that one right away. AST SpaceMobile. Right. It's the internet via cell phone service via satellite company, which have had me very excited all year. Except it's not happening yet, and it's a super expensive endeavor too. So let's take a look at that stock. Right. Chris, I do want you to look up AMPY. This was one that was mentioned earlier on, I think, in the energy sector. So I'll have you look at that one in a minute. But let's look at ASTS, Thomas. What's been happening with
I thought they were supposed to release earnings today, but it's not out yet. Maybe it's not coming out yet. But the market action today was pretty good. Stock rose by 10%. Expecting good news. The forecast is for another hyper acceleration in the growth, plays into that growth outlook. So I would expect to see some upsides. Something I noticed about this stock the other day that was concerning is the once very bullish analysts seem to have given up on the stock. pull this up again. It looks like 4-9. We've got 12, but the consensus has fallen to reduce. Really, it's more like a hold. We've got 5 of the 9 at a hold, but 4 reducing, 3 buying. So there's not really a lot of conviction in the rating. The number of reduced ratings has improved, has risen, I should say. The stock price consensus has edged higher, but it's trailing the market and suggests a 40% downside. So there is some risk with this one. Forecasts are good for the earnings and for the revenue. Forecasts for the stock price don't really match that outlook. So in this result, we're going to really want to see strength, but also some good, strong, solid guidance, optimistic guidance, no hurdles, no execution delays to help get the analysts, back on board.
Yeah, I think it's important to say with ASTS, I think that the concept is so great. I also think it's going to cost so much money to build out. And I think that that's why we're going to keep seeing these earnings that are maybe not great. There are some different contracts and different partnerships with some of the major mobile carriers. But the idea is there. It's can they execute and can they raise the cash to actually make this happen?
Well,
And I think
right.
that that's an important part of the conversation.
The institutional data says these guys think that it's going to happen. They own 60% of the stock. That's pretty solid. Shows pretty high conviction.
Yep.
They've accumulated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters in a row, and then here in the first 2 months of Q1, they accelerated activity, set a record high. Let's see, more than 4 to 1. Buying to selling. So that's pretty strong. Looks like the institutions are part of this support. They're looking for the price to rebound. I would assume that if the report is, less than awesome and the stock price were to retreat, institutions would be among the buyers. Uptrend's probably still intact. So again, just waiting for a good catalyst to help drive it higher.
Thomas, the next one I have you look up is Datavault. We had a few people ask about that one. And then I'm going to get to, I think that this is interesting, looking at ALMU. I believe that's what I have pulled up here. No, AAOI. That's another interesting one too. So we'll get to that. I see a couple comments about these jumping about 30% today, which I do see on the chart. But what did I have you looking at, Chris? I already forgot.
Yeah, you're looking at Amplify.
That's right. What's that? What's the ticker?
AMPY.
As I had that one pulled up earlier. Okay, let's look at that chart.
Can understand why investors were interested in this. So this is a small cap name in the energy space. They're an upstream oil and gas company, and so their price is going to be very sensitive to the price of oil, which explains a lot of the reason why the stock is up today. There is a story here that I think is exciting traders right now, and that is that the company late last year sold off some of its assets, and they've used that to pay down some of their debt. So from a balance sheet standpoint, they're well positioned for the moment that they're getting right now, which is higher oil prices, and that's driving the stock price up. And I believe that that's what's causing, analysts are bullish about it. Even with the move up today, there still looks like there's 22% upside to the consensus target. Short interest is up, but it's down from late last year. It's around 7% of the float, but there's 42% institutional ownership, heavy buying in the last quarter. But when I say heavy buying, I'm talking that's a relative term. There was 18 million bought versus 2.2 sold. So not a ton of buying, but more certainly the buyers outweigh the sellers, and that could just be because again, the thought's been that oil prices were going to go higher anyway, and now they're certainly going to go higher. So the company, I just was checking it. They report earnings this week, Wednesday. So might be an interesting thing to look at. To me, it's a speculative stock. It's a trade more than it is a buy and hold, but they could be in the right place at the right time because of what they've done to clean up their balance sheet.
Yeah. Just because we're talking about it right now, energy in general, I wanted to mention both of these earlier. You can't have what happened this weekend happen without talking about oil prices today, and we haven't really mentioned that. So I just wanted to pull up the charts for the USO. That had a huge jump today. We saw a big jump on that one, and then also looking at the XLE, both ETFs for oil, both saw some big jumps today. Either of you, do you have any long-term outlook on what we expect either of these ETFs, or are there any other ways to look at kind of trading around what the oil prices are going to be doing right now? Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Well, I'll start. I know Thomas is going to have weigh in. I'll let him get his thoughts together. I think that the thing with oil is it's a developing story, and I think you saw that the price of oil spiked overnight. It spiked in the pre-market, started to pull back during the day of trading, as it looked like, to Thomas's point, it looked like this might be a shorter than longer event that wasn't going to be affecting the Straits of Hormuz. We just heard before we went on that Iran is at least saying that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. That could be a bigger-ish deal. That could start moving oil prices closer to that $100 mark. That's what investors were thinking about last night and this morning, and then they were backing off on crude prices because they didn't think it was going to get that high. Now It looks like $100 or higher is on the table. Oil's going to be volatile until this is over.
Right. The longer it takes, the higher the price of oil will go.
Yeah.
And I think there were some recent signs of some demand improvement, and some of the forecasts are starting to kind of back off the idea of oversupply this year. So there was already a pretty solid support base building for oil. Today's action looks like oil's back in play. Price action is above all three moving averages. So that's telling me there's not a high probability, but a high possibility that the market could continue to move higher, potentially aggressively over the next couple of days and weeks. But, and there's a big but also, today's price action, as Chris said, started out way up here, and it kind of sold off throughout the day. It's showing support above the moving average, but it also shows resistance at the top of a trading range. So if we can't get above that range, oil is going to stay where it is, in this low range where it's been for the last almost the last year, really. So at this level where oil companies are able to make cash, they're not growing, but good for capital returns, not so much necessarily for oil indices and oil stock prices in general.
Agreed.
All right, very good. Let's take a look at, Chris, I'm going to have you look into that AAOI and ALMU. These are two names that had big jumps today. I kind of wanted to look at the why. Why might they have spiked? So I'll have you look at both of those. And then
AAOI and what else?
Yeah, AAOI and then ALMU. Look at both of those for now. And then Thomas, let's look at Datavault, one of our regulars that always comes up. I believe this one was up a little bit, actually.
I think it rose from its lows, but it closed with a loss for the day.
Did it?
This stock is just kind of wallowing near its long-term lows. Kind of a similar story to Big Bear, where it's just like a market with promise that's waiting for something to affirm the promise and give people a reason to buy it. Right now, there's not a ton of analyst or institutional interest. There is some short interest weighing on the stock, on the market. So I would expect to see it continue to move sideways until we get a big catalyst coming out. That could come in the next earnings report. This year should be a pivotal year with revenue really starting to ramp higher. If we see signs of that in the report, that could get the market moving. If not, there is certainly a risk of this one falling from about 65 cents where it is now, down into the 25-cent range.
I do think one thing that's interesting about this one, just because we look at this most weeks, I feel like the $4 price target is new, and I do think that's because we actually had one analyst, and again, very little analyst coverage here. It's not like this is a trend, but one analyst had a price target of $3 and boosted it to $4 just this last month, or in January, which is interesting that one of only 3 people covering the stock keeps raising the price higher, and we just haven't seen that happen yet.
Well, they've got a reason to believe that. Certainly, the company is advancing its technology. There is a good expectation for revenue to ramp. But again, for me, I don't see it in the results. Don't see it in the stock price action yet. So if you want to trade this penny stock, looking for some big penny stock gains, that's fine. But for me, when we get that catalyst, the stock might double or triple in price real fast, but that won't bother me because I'll expect it to double or triple or quadruple again from there. It's just, it's just how do you want to play it? What are you looking for happening? And then when's the catalyst? I think they're supposed to report in a couple of weeks, so that could be it.
All right, very good. Let's move on to these other names that are up quite a bit right now. And I think it's important. I think this is a great time. We just talked about Datavault, and now we're talking about these other two that have jumped a bunch right now. Nothing we talk about here is advice to buy a stock or not buy a stock. We're really just giving you a cold look at it. These guys are giving you their opinion, a cold look at how these stocks are doing. And sometimes we talk about a stock that is just interesting, that might not be in a buying range at all. And it's potential that these two names might be that because they both jumped so much today, Chris. Let's start with ALMU. I have that one pulled up first. It looks like it closed the day up 25% almost.
Let me see here. ALMU. I didn't.
Oh, if you're ready to talk about the other.
No, I hadn't pulled up the chart yet on that one. Let me see here. Yeah, it's up almost 25% today. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so that one's up quite a bit today.
Yeah.
And then looking at the other one at the same time, the AAOI, that one jumped 21% today. And you can see that one in the chart really easily. So do they do similar things? Are they very different stocks? I'm curious.
They're not very different stocks. They are a little bit different. These are both playing in that space of photonics. AAOI is playing in it more directly than ALMU is. But actually, Thomas might be able to talk a little bit more about ALMU because I noticed he had it in his 5 stocks for March here.
Well, I've covered it recently, and it's very, very interesting company because it's not only working with compound semiconductors, which is using multiple forms of silicone or other compounds to make semiconductors, but it's also got a manufacturing process. So this is important for data centers because with these compound semiconductors, they're able to incorporate photonics into a standard silicone chip. Photonics is important because you're transmitting data and information with light and lasers, which is much faster than traditional methods. Good for data centers. But then at the same time, their manufacturing process is supposed to be easier and cheaper. So they can capture the market with their photonics, but they can also revolutionize the market with their manufacturing processes. So a lot of good potential here. Also has a U.S. manufacturing footprint. If I remember correctly, they've got some government contracts in play. So revenue and profitability outlook is certainly improving. And today's stock price action affirms this outlook. I can't find anything in the news to say why it happened today, but we got a almost 25% stock price increase at the close and a spike in volume, accompanied by bullish signals in the chart. So the stock price, which really has been range bound for the last more than a year, almost a year, is moving higher within that range. Looks like it's going to go up to the the $25 level pretty easily based on today's signal, and could go higher.
Yeah, Thomas, this goes to show how many stocks we talk about. I completely forgot that was just on your buy list for March. We talked about
a couple of days ago, right?
Just a couple of days ago. We just talked about this.
Imagine what it's like. I mean, I wrote 3 articles a day. Some of them were about more than one stock, and all of them have competitors and tangential things. So it's easy to really look at 25 or 30 stocks in a day, every day of the week.
And that is why we can rapid fire these names, because we might have seen it already just a couple of days ago and we already forgot. I do want to talk a little bit.
AAOI though.
Yeah.
Yeah, AAOI is the kind of the big brother of ALMU. I mean, it operates in that similar area of the photonics and moving the moving data via light and things. And the company reported earnings last week, and they moved much closer to profitability than many analysts were expecting. They were expecting a adjusted loss per share of 12 cents, and it came in at only minus a penny. And they're almost profitable too on a GAAP basis. Revenues strongly up year over year. So this is one of those that it's apparently the stock is getting, from what I'm reading, the stock is getting a lot of play on social media. And it's another stock that right now, and what you might have been seeing today, might have been part of a short squeeze. Short interest is about 16% of the float. So
I think that's important to remember. With a lot of the stocks, I see these big jumps in a day. The short interest can always be a part of that story. So keep that in mind a little bit too. All right. We probably only have time to cover one more stock each, and we have so many different names out there of things that people want to hear about right now. So I'm just trying to pick a couple of random last ones to talk about here. This is a name that we've talked about before, so I think it's worth covering. A few people have asked about Credo, CRDO. Let's cover that for one of our last stocks to talk about. And then, Chris, I'll have you look up. We covered Plug last week. I think it's an interesting ticker, but we've talked about that, I feel like, the last 2 weeks. A name we haven't covered in a little bit. I think 2 people asked about it. Applied Digital. I'd love to see an update on what's going on with them. So APLD, it's not a new name. We've heard about it, but we haven't done an update in a few weeks. So take a quick look at that. And then I'm going to pull up Credo right now. And then we'll end with Michael Anthony, one of our regular viewers, had more of a broad market question. And so I think we'll end on that one too. So we'll get to that in just a second.
Right. I can do Credo.
Yep. I've got that one pulled up right now, Thomas. Give it a go.
I like Credo. They are into networking and connectivity for data centers. So they are well positioned for this whole, data center boom. Right now, the stock price has pulled back pretty significantly, but I consider this to be a buying opportunity. Technical action, shows that bottom right around $100. Had a little rebound. We pulled back last week. Today we opened with a new low, but buyer stepped in, drove us back up to close with a gain. So we're showing a bottom right there. Indicators are in alignment with an entry signal. Looking for a bullish momentum swing. There is some risk of resistance. Their moving average is around $130, but with the catalyst in play, the market should move right above that level. Let's look. I think that earnings are due out.
It looks like today, and they did amazing.
Right.
And they did amazing. Yeah, take a look at that.
All right, let me see that. Looks like they're down 10% in after hours action, which is a little bit concerning here.
Interesting.
Beats and raised guidances. Yeah, this is just a tired market that's selling off for a knee-jerk reason. I would expect to see this market have recovered tomorrow morning, and if it doesn't, then throughout the day, this is to me is a total buying opportunity. The outlook for this stock is really robust. It was already a value. With a beat and raise quarter, the value is even better. So this is just like imagine a spring pulling back, getting ready to rocket higher. That spring just got a little bit tighter today. Tomorrow, this week, next week, I would expect to see it unleash and see that rebound start unfolding.
It's always interesting to me when you see a beat like this where a report comes out well and the stock goes down. So interesting when we see that. Well, and it's not an uncommon story. We see it often.
Well, right. So you look at the trends and the expectation was high. So it is beating the consensus, but the trends have revisions. Recent revisions are well above the consensus. So the most recent estimates are well above the consensus. So these results, they beat the consensus. They might not have beaten the most recent estimates. They might only be in alignment with them or even short of those most recent estimates, which kind of gives the market a reason for some pause, not a lot of pause, but for some. And in this case, it looks like, we're oversold, setting up for a rebound, and a beat and raise quarter to me is a reason to buy the stock.
All right. Very good. Let's get to that last one that you were looking at, Applied Digital. Chris, let's look at that.
Right. Yeah. So the stock, they had actually a good earnings report in early January. They beat earnings by over 40%. They beat revenue by over 55%. One of the problems that's hanging over the stock right now is that NVIDIA dumped the shares. And
interesting.
NVIDIA didn't just target Applied Digital. They also dumped shares of other companies, but it hasn't helped the stock. Let's just say that. And the stock's down a little bit. Analysts still like it in general. I haven't seen a lot of new price targets since the NVIDIA announcement, but analysts were bullish on it coming out of their earnings report. Right now, the stock's trading about 32% below the consensus. Not seeing any examples of institutions not buying it. Short interest is a little bit high. So that could be that could make it an interesting trade possibility if it does spike. And it was up today. I noticed today it was up about 2.5% today. So I'm not sure if the story has changed that much with Applied Digital, but certainly the news from NVIDIA didn't help.
Yeah, that's an interesting tidbit about that one, and good to look at. This is a good segue into that last macro question to talk about. Again, Michael, I had the question earlier, and then very, very early to start the show, somebody had just asked about the tech sector and what do we expect the tech sector to do. Michael's question kind of revolved around expecting a pullback in tech or just expecting that bubble to hit and kind of preparing for that a little bit more. It is interesting that we talked about some drone stocks and some battery stocks, which do kind of qualify as new tech, but looking at the broader chip tech and that market right now, anything new to talk about from either of you or any different outlooks for the year in that sector?
I mean, not specifically or even really generally. We're just still waiting for this AI story to keep unfolding. There's been plenty of time between when the AI story, first developed and the time that it takes for the data centers to be built and the technology to be developed so that they can apply it. And we're reaching that time where application is going to start accelerating. And we should see those things, those applications and those services really impact businesses across sectors. I think tech is going to stay strong. I mean, there's just so much money flowing into the infrastructure build out, into the preparation for building all these applications. There's just no sign of it stopping right now.
Good. Chris,
I agree with Thomas. Yeah, I agree with Thomas. I think when we look at the tech sector in November and December, I believe we're going to see a sector that you're going to start now having stacked quarters of seeing that the data center demand is real, that the investments that these companies are making are warranted, and that's going to drive the entire sector. As far as the question, I believe, was like what was going to happen this month. I would have had a very different answer 2 days ago, but I think today I would just say I think a lot of the big names in tech are going to be on pause until we get past this situation. And that's not because of anything structurally wrong with the business. I think it's just because you're going to see traders, especially traders with big money, are going to be putting their money into other areas where they can get a bigger profit in the next, as long as we are in this, I don't know if, I guess we really don't call it a war because it hasn't been officially declared a war, but as long as we're in these engaged with Iran in military like we are, then I think everything's on pause in terms of this month. But the longer term story for tech, I think, is still in place. Absolutely.
Well, thank you both for all of your time today. I kept you a little bit later than normal. And thank you to everybody for watching and all the stock suggestions today. We covered a lot once again. If you're not a subscriber to MarketBeat yet, I do want to throw this out there. We would really love to have you subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get more people to join the chat, get some interesting stock tickers out there too. So thanks again for watching, for all of those who join our live stream regularly. And if this was your first time here, we were so glad you're here. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. We'd love to have you be an official MarketBeat subscriber. And thanks for being a part of our YouTube community. We really appreciate everyone here. Have a great day, and as always, happy investing out there.